We're going to get started in just a few minutes, but we'll go ahead and, create some shared space together. If folks want to jump into the chat and introduce yourselves, you can share your name, your pronouns, where you're calling in from, and just how you're showing up in this space. We know it's a really heavy week, a lot to process following this really pivotal election, outcomes that we know are going to have a lot of consequences for our communities and for the planet. And we all need to come together and take a deep breath and figure out how to strategize and move forward. So yeah, feel free to check in the chat box, and we'll go ahead and get started. So my name is Priya Mulgaonkar. I use she, they pronouns. I'm a staff member at the Green New Deal Network. Really happy to be facilitating our call today. I'm currently calling in from a Brooklyn that has been experiencing 80-degree weather in November and its worst drought in 20 years. So I'm honestly oscillating between a lot of anger after this election, a lot of fear for the future, and a lot of numbness and anxiety in the face of another Trump regime and what that will mean for the climate and for my community. But I'm genuinely really energized just seeing the number of folks coming on the line. We're already almost at 100 participants just 3 minutes in. And it's really powerful just how many folks are trying to show up in this moment, knowing that we need to chart a path forward. So I just want to thank you all for taking the time and joining us. And with that, I'll just walk us through the agenda for tonight's call. We're going to do a little bit of grounding. I'm really grateful for our executive director, Kanyella Ng, who's going to offer that for us. And then I'll pass it to my colleague, Giancarlo, who's going to give us a state of play and where we're at following this election. What does that mean for transportation? And then we're really excited to have a panel of wonderful speakers who are going to share out exactly what we need in this moment to move forward toward clean, accessible, and vibrant transportation for everyone. We'll start with the wonderful Senator Ed Markey. We have Akshay Singh from Move Ohio, Molly McKinley as well from the National Campaign for Transportation Justice, and Jeff Joins from BMWED. And then after we hear from our speakers, I'm really excited for my colleague Saul to walk us through our strategy to win. We know we need to fight for a better transportation future for everyone, and we have some ideas of how we can all come together and do that. And then we'll walk through a few next steps at the end. So for folks who are just joining, feel free to check in the chat box. And for now, I'll turn it over to Kanyella, who's going to give us some grounding. So Mercedes, if you want to go ahead and stop screen share for a minute, that'd be great.
Hey everyone, it's Kanyella Ng. I'm the National Director at the Green New Deal Network, and it's so great to be on this call with everyone. I know it's the dark day, and you folks on this call, we all know that this election result will have major consequences for people and our planet and has left us with a major fight ahead. And we only have a few years to transform everything in society, really, and especially our economy, land use, and infrastructure to avert climate calamities. So, it excites me to see so much folks on the call that are just, these are like, y'all are like the real deals. Like these are people that 100+ people now that have the power to actually move communities. So really exciting to see. I'm actually en route right now in LAX, headed back home. And, it's really clear to me some of the gaps, especially in this city, that we have in our transportation infrastructure in America. It makes up over a third of U.S. emissions, thanks to decades of pro-highway racist land use policies and billions of dollars spent that's rooted in, everything from redlining to environmental injustice that has tore apart communities and has jeopardized our health and safety. So we all deserve better. We need clean air, clean water, and connectiveness that allows us to thrive. The good news is, while climate deniers kind of ramp up the spread of disinformation on clean energy, transportation transformation is generally popular across party lines, even in states that went to Trump in the election. We all love fast things, trains, and community. So we envision this community where seniors and people with disabilities can get around freely and easily and affordably. Parents with strollers don't have to struggle. I've been there for years now. Friends can reconnect. I used to live in student housing in college, and we could just get together anytime, just serendipitously, and play music. Now, I'm trying to play music with my college friends, and we got to plan out 3 months in advance. That's doesn't have to be that way. It's not that way in a lot of different cities. It's really a quintessentially American phenomenon where we're stuck in this vehicular isolation. My kid just performed hula. They were Kanaka Maoli, were Native Hawaiian at Disneyland. And I was wondering, like, why do people love Disneyland so much? Well, it's because it's that sense, right? Like good land use. You got the train going in the middle. You got these mixed use buildings, shopping, fun, everything. It makes sense aesthetically. It's culturally uh, coherent, and we could have that in America, and like it's the reason why Disneyland's not so popular in Europe and in places that have better land use. So how can we design our communities that really bring us together and get us having conversations on that human level? And personally, I think the only way we're really going to cut through the disinformation and climate denial is to be able to foster those millions of those conversations. And what better way to do that than getting people together in mass transit and common spaces across town. So really glad to be here with all of y'all, and really excited about the work we can dig in together.
Thanks so much, Kaniela. Great. So we're going to go ahead and move it along to Giancarlo, who's going to ground us in the kind of state of play of transportation right now, following this pivotal election. So Mercedes, if I could bother you to reopen our slides and go to that section, that'd be great.
Yes, getting those slides right now.
Thank you.
Well, hey y'all. My name is Giancarlo Valdatero. I'm a legislative associate here at the Green New Deal Network covering transportation policy. And suffice to say, Tuesday was a bit of a setback to good transportation policy at the federal level. The current state of play after Trump winning re-election on Tuesday is that we're looking at a setback to a lot of the progress that was made under the Biden administration. In Donald Trump's first term, with his grant-making authority, in the executive branch, he prioritized expanding highways over investments in transit and sidewalks. And the Project 2025 agenda on transportation seems set on making that agenda even more extreme this time around, going so far as to claim that transit should not be getting support from the federal government with its funding. And we did make some progress under the Biden administration, especially when it comes to passenger rail and funds for safety projects on our local roads and even on some of our highways. That said, based on analysis done by places like Transportation for America, the bipartisan infrastructure is set to increase emissions, and it didn't address some of the fundamental problems that we have with our transportation system today. Too many of us are stuck in traffic, on roads that are poorly maintained, in cars that are too expensive for the people who are trying to buy them and for the people that make them to buy. And all of us have few other options for how to get around, whether we need those options to survive day to day, or if we just want them. And part of that, that lack of other options has often divided our communities as well. And so it's also important to reiterate, that just switching to electric vehicles isn't going to save us. That's not going to solve the traffic. That's not going to solve the expensive element of cars. That's not going to solve the fact that we can't walk to a grocery store near us in many cases. We need to transform our entire transportation system. And although we've taken a bit of a setback at the federal level, that just means it's time for state and local governments to lead the way while we fight tooth and nail to regain power at the federal level and have our demands ready for the next governing moment, taking, inspiration from what happened in Minnesota in 2023, where a Democratic trifecta was able to pass incredibly ambitious transportation reforms. So we're about to enter a multi-year fight, and we know we can win if we build power together with people like you and people that we haven't gotten to talk to yet. So we really hope you'll join us in this fight. And, after our incredible guest speakers talk a little bit more about the fights that they've already been going through, we're going to, give you a way to get involved in that fight. So I'll hand it back over to you, Priya.
Thank you. Really appreciate that. Yeah, it's really important to recognize the, both severity of the moment we're in and that this is a long fight and that folks have been, struggling against our horrible transportation system for a long time. And a lot of people are leading the way, both at the federal level, the local level, the state level. So really excited to hear from some of those folks on the ground. We wanted to first turn it over to our special guest, Senator Ed Markey, if he is on the line. Let me just check on that.
Hey, Priya, let's come back to the senator. He's running a minute behind, so we can go to the next person and come back.
No worries, sounds good. So really excited to turn it over to Akshay Singh from Move Ohio. Let me just make sure we're getting you spotlit.
Hey folks, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, Akshay Singh here from Cleveland, but I've been working with folks in Columbus this past several months, and of all of the myriad of losses that came through on Tuesday, the shining spot that we had was issue 47 in Franklin County, and it was almost relatively risky. They were doing a double or nothing transit funding. It was both a renewal and an extension. So they could go up to 1% sales tax, or they could be dropped to 0.25. And so there was a lot on the line for transit. And I'm really, really thankful for the collaboration that we were able to do on the ground with Transport Workers Local 208. And that wasn't just in the election run-in, that was from last year when they had a contract fight. They were prepared to strike, and we had folks from whether it was Transit Columbus or Transit Riders Organizers down in Columbus, or Sunrise Movement or DSA. We had folks who were standing up with the TWU local, with their members to make sure that they could secure a strong contract. And without that, they were able to push for a change in the executive director, but without that, you wouldn't have had workers who were standing there showing their support for this, what are oftentimes regressive sales tax increases. But what we're seeing is that working class folks are willing to fund public services that they know are coming around their communities, that they know, that they see, that they're in touch with. And when we've got alignment with our workers, when we have a community labor alliance, it's one of the few things that we've known from the late great Shane McAlevey. That's the time when we win. That's the time that we're able to fight and win. And I'll tell you what, in the next 4 years, there's a lot of contracts that are going to be up for a fight. And there's a lot of fights that we can get involved with that aren't going to go away because of the electoral cycle in the next 2 or 4 years. So I really encourage you, look up when your transit agency's contract is up. You can find that out. You just Google it'll be an acronym, your agency's name, and your local's contract, and you'll be able to see it yourself. And you can get with them, and you can show them that you're in solidarity. And that's not just in transit, that's in power, that's in private sector. I'm at Starbucks workers, and we're going to have some fights here coming up. So I just really want to encourage y'all. It's been a hell of a tough year, and we're going to be fighting, and we're going to be together on that. So I'm just thankful for everybody who's here, who's committed, and in our pain, we're together, and we're not going to shrug that off really quickly, but we're going to fight. So solidarity, y'all. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Akshay. Highlighting just the depth and breadth of the union and labor organizing that we're going to need to do to win is so powerful and so important. And just really appreciate you being out there in the streets and doing that good work. Yeah, you know, the solidarity forever. We're going to keep bringing together climate folks, transportation workers, workers in all sectors, because we know that's the only way we're going to build enough power to really transform everything. Great. So now I'm going to pass it along. I think up next, I'll pass it to Molly McKinley if you're able to jump in.
Yeah, I'm sure. Hi, y'all. Molly McKinley, she, her. I'm based in Aurora, Colorado, and I work for the National Campaign for Transit Justice. The National Campaign works to ensure that Congress is investing in the future of public transit because, like you, we believe that transit is essential and has to be top of mind for decision makers. So our campaign is supported by a broad range of local, state, and national groups, many of whom I've seen a lot of friendly, familiar faces in the attendees list. So hi, everyone. I'll start with a couple of updates about where we are today and then looking ahead for our campaign. So as Akshay just mentioned, there were a number of local ballot measures across the country. There were, I think, 54 related to transit funding, and 46 or 85% of those were successful. That's one of my little bright nuggets as I've been sifting through election results. And another little bright spot in our work right now is that we've been really focused on building strong support for transit operations funding as we look ahead towards federal transportation reauthorization. To do that, we've been focused on getting a strong showing of co-sponsors on Representative Hank Johnson's Stronger Communities Through Better Transit Act, which proposes a new federal grant program available to all transit agencies for operations. Our goal is to reach 150, and we're at 140, maybe unofficially 142 to 143, with some folks who haven't appeared officially yet, but we're working hard to get to the finish line there, and I'm really hopeful that we will, and just to be able to make a big statement, a strong statement, moving ahead that transit operations funding is important to a critical mass of folks. So looking ahead, our campaign is committed to sticking with our vision for funding transit and making all of our communities accessible. That includes increasing funding for transit operations, advocating for a shift towards more of a 50-50 split for transportation funding as opposed to the current 80-20 split where 80% of our federal transportation funding goes towards highways and roads and 20% typically goes to transit. And then, of course, we'll be supporting broader asks for rail, biking, walking, Vision Zero, safety type of work. We're not going to negotiate with ourselves. We're not going to just lower our own bar of what we think is needed to make a change in people's lives and address the climate crisis just because of the outcome of this election. We'll negotiate to make progress along the way, but we're not going to be changing our North Stars. Next, we're going to be speaking to the audience that we have, and that's going to be a lot of Republicans, and they need to hear about how transit helps build strong local economies, creates jobs, and that they see transit in their own communities. So to that end, we'll raise the importance of transit in small cities and towns and build a constituency of diversity of communities. And we'll build strong local models and fight for change in our communities and at state capitals. I know a lot of folks in states around the country are doing this work already, and we're going to look to support folks who are working to shift money from highways to transit, biking, and walking. And lastly, we'll make our case. In order to make our case, we'll need to expand our own base of supporters geographically. We'll need to be making sure that riders' voices are front and center. We need small and large businesses making the economic case for transit. And we need broader support from labor, from low-wage unions whose workers use transit. I'll just close by saying that I'd be lying to all of you if I said I feel really clear-eyed about the task at hand, because I'm not. I cried about an hour ago. Personally, I feel like a lot of you, I imagine. I'm still processing. I'm kind of in a rage phase right now, but I'm afraid on a lot of fronts. And professionally, I know that this work just simultaneously got a lot more difficult and a lot more important. One of the things that's continued to give me some hope and energy to put one foot in front of the other in this work over the last decade, and especially in the last 36 hours, is community. It's all of you that care enough to be here tonight. It's my partner and my chosen family. It's the transit riders that I talk to every day about their experiences and what they're doing to make change in their own communities. And it's people who've been at the forefront of some really important movement work, like Leanne, who leads the national campaign, and like a number of you also on this call, who've been able to bring some perspective to my processing. I'll just wrap up by saying something that she said on a call this morning that's been sticking with me all day, is that they don't call it the struggle because it's easy. So thanks all of you for being here.
Thank you so much, Molly. And yeah, thank you for bringing us a few bright spots. It's important to remember that there were some really exciting wins on the local and state level. I'm also seeing in the chat the shout out about Washington State defeating a repeal of the Climate Commitment Act. As someone from Washington State originally, yeah, very relieved that folks really fought that back. And we're going to be on defense in a lot of ways over the next 4 years, but I think there are still opportunities to move the needle in a really positive way. And just really appreciate you, Molly, shouting out, like, we don't need to negotiate against ourselves. You know, we can set the bar really high because we know how high the stakes are, and we need ambition to meet the scale of this crisis. So really appreciate everything you shared. Great. I'm seeing the wonderful Senator Ed Markey on the line, so we'll pass it over to him.
Thank you. Thanks for everyone who has joined us tonight. I love the energy. I love the fact that you're up and you're ready to go, because it's always about the future, and you have to continue to fight to lift the gaze of everyone to the constellation of possibilities. And I just can't thank all of you who are on this call enough for being leaders, because even in the face of a new and brutal administration, our goals have to remain the same. We just have to drastically reimagine transportation in this country if we're going to save the planet and its people. We have to move away from dangerous gas guzzling vehicles and make investments in modes of transportation that are greener and are more equitable. And so I'm just so grateful to the Green New Deal Network support and helping me write 2 bills that define a progressive vision for the future of transportation: my Green Streets Act and my Complete Streets Act. The next Congress will be charged with reauthorizing the infrastructure law. And we will have to fight hard to prioritize the health of our planet over highways, and to choose the safety of our communities over speed. And the Green Streets Act requires states to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and vehicle miles traveled on highway systems. If we don't, they'll be required to spend their federal funds on projects that will. We know what infrastructure investments can save the planet. We need more public transit. We need more bike lanes, safe pedestrian corridors, and commuter rail. We know the answers. And if the federal government worked with states to prioritize these investments, it would drastically reduce emissions and make our communities more livable. And next Congress, we are going to be lean, green streets fighting machines to get it done. We're going to get up and we're just going to fight. We're going to be making our case, because we're right and they're wrong who are trying to be stopping us. And we're just going to have to show that we've got the resiliency, the resourcefulness to just make sure that 2025 is the year that we're proudest of, in terms of the willingness that we all have to get up and make the case for the right thing. My Complete Streets Act will advance our goals as well. When it comes to making our infrastructure greener and safer, the Complete Streets Act doesn't make improvements on the margins. It shifts the paradigm completely and requires that all new streets are complete streets, built with all its road users in mind. And with my bill, cyclists, pedestrians, other road users will be front and center when we are building new roads and infrastructure. With my bill, we will finally put livability, the health of our planet, and the safety of our people above anything else. So why keep fighting? Well, we never stop fighting the existential threat of climate change. And Donald Trump's denial, delay, obstructionist agenda is another existential threat that we will not let stand. In Congress, I will partner with state and local leaders, including the many on this call tonight, to elevate and build a national coalition around our priorities. And I will work to defend the incredible investments we were already able to secure in the Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law. And I will work in solidarity with all of you to keep fighting for the issues that matter to working people, being able to move about our daily lives in a way that is safe and affordable and clean and built and run with well-paid union workers. This coalition of labor and climate activists is going to create the union-made renewable energy that will power our movement through the Trump-fueled dark ages and back into a better world. The planet is sick, and it's making our people sick. There are no emergency rooms for planets, but the prescription for what ails us is clear. We need a whole of government approach to address the climate crisis while building good union jobs and bringing justice for everyone. The Green New Deal must bring together those union jobs and justice and climate action. This transportation agenda hits all of those critical priorities. This is a revolution for climate action, and we can't afford to leave workers behind. It's a year of record-breaking heat. Let's turn that into a summer of record-breaking solidarity. Our movement falls when we don't stand together. No one builds better than union workers. Let's build a better world together. This is going to be a test for everyone, but in 2026, we could just take the House and Senate with bigger numbers, and all of a sudden, we're on the upward trajectory, the vertical trajectory once again. In the meantime, we've got to advocate, we've got to educate, we've got to organize, and we've got to make sure that we put out the big ideas that we know ultimately are going to become the laws of our nation, that are going to become the examples that everyone understands has to be the future of the 21st century. So I can't thank all of you enough for everything that you're doing. Looking forward to partnering with you, and thank you for leading a day after Trump got elected president. It just says so much about you and what you're going to be doing over this next year to reverse the worst, most catastrophic policies that he might try to propose, while substituting in the minds of Americans this much more optimistic green agenda that ultimately has to be the future for our country. So thank you all so much. Thanks for everything that you're doing.
Thank you so much, Senator. It's such a great relief to know that we have such a champion in the Senate fighting for a Green New Deal, and who really works with advocates and works with grassroots folks to fight for what we know we need. And yeah, just really appreciate your energy and your commitment and your resilience in leading this fight. And we're excited to continue fighting with you.
Thank you. Thank you
Great.
so much. Thanks for everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Awesome. So really grateful. Our final speaker is Jeff Joins. We're really excited to hear from you, and take it away.
Well, thank you. Like everybody on the call, Tuesday was a bummer for me, so I checked out and went to the farm for a while, and I'll be back in DC on Monday, but I'm regrouping a little bit. But my name is Jeff Joins. I'm the National Legislative Director for the Brotherhood of Maintenance Away, and along with the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers, we make up the Teamsters Rail Conference, which represents half of all railroad workers in the country. And I will tell you, we've been excited, and I appreciate the opportunity to get on here and tell some of the folks what we've have been able to do over the last couple of years, and what we're looking to do for not only good union jobs, but the climate, and to partner with good people like you to make sure that you know, what we've been doing over the last 150 years continues and gets better for everybody. And one of the exciting things in our world is high-speed rail coming online. You know, all of rail labor worked hard and with the IIJA and the funding that was in the IIJA, it made it possible to get the first big deal done with Brightline. And I will tell you that I think once the Brightline gets up and running in about 4 years, 3 years from now, 3.5, 4 years from now, everybody's going to want one. It's not going to be as hard of a sale, you know. But what I will tell you is, and one of the things that we have to not defend but protect is the California High-Speed Rail Project. And I will tell you, the California High-Speed Rail Project is the biggest infrastructure project in America. And it's employing right now over 15,000 good union jobs, you know. And when Brightline starts, which they're going to start here just in the next couple of months, you know, it's going to employ around 6,000 or 7,000 good union jobs as they build it, and then be able to have good union jobs to operate it once it's up and running. So, you know, we've got an MOU with Brightline, California High-Speed Rail, the High Desert Corridor, all of the high-speed rail projects that are in the pipeline that are being built or being designed right now have an MOU with rail laborers and with the construction trades. And so, you know, it's important that we get in there with the first project, the second project, the third project, the fourth project, because the fifth, sixth, and seventh will have to come to us. And so we want to make sure that all these high-speed rail projects that are coming online are good union jobs. I'll just give you an example. With the Brightline project, we was able to help them secure the $3 billion that they needed to get the project up and running, and for our partnership to secure that, Brightline signed the MOU with us, and you may have seen it about a month ago. Siemens is going to operate, or Siemens is going to build their engines in their cars. Siemens has never had a contract with a labor organization since they've been here. But our MOU was so strong, if Siemens wanted to have to build it, then they're going up to New York to build a brand new factory, and it's going to be all rail labor that's operating that thing there. So we're seeing, you know, great union jobs coming out of high-speed rail. I will tell you that one of the things that the reason why we want to see a partnership with groups like this and labor and everything together is, you know, there's some roadblocks that are set up on high-speed rail. Everybody thinks Brightline. I said, man, Brightline's got it going on because, you know, they came in, they got their money and they're building. But what they don't realize is, you know, that project has been in development for over 20 years. And so, you know, they came in at the right time after all of the NEPA and other things were done, and we're able to secure that money, and they're building, and we're excited about that. But we also want to get excited about other areas of the country that are in those baby stages. And so there's a lot of things that we can do to speed up the project, because when you go ask for money for high-speed rail, you know, it's hard to convince somebody to give you billions of dollars and you're going to see something 20 years from now. And so what we want to do is we want to be able to speed up that project without, we want to see the project sped up, but we don't want to see the things that are, like I heard somebody on here, we're not going to negotiate against ourselves, and we're not going to work against ourselves on things that is important, things like NEPA and those kind of things. But there are areas that we can speed that up. And so I look forward to working with this group. I will tell you that I know rail labor is excited that we have an opportunity to be involved here. And I can't speak for all the rail unions, but I'll go ahead and do that. I guarantee you that we're all pulling in the same direction. And I think, like the senator said, if we can all sort of work together on a common cause, whether it's high-speed rail, transit, whatever it is, then it'll definitely make a difference. I'll just leave you with this: it costs more to build a mile of highway than it does a mile of high-speed rail. And so when we convince those folks that that's absolutely the case, and we can speed up this NEPA process, we can solve their congestion on their highways by taking millions of cars off highways and putting those butts in a high-speed rail train, or Amtrak train, or a transit train. So we're right in there with you, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and let you sort of hear from our side what we're doing.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Some more inspiring, setting the bar high, setting those really strong MOUs and ensuring that any more construction for high-speed rail has to meet those standards. We got to keep fighting for that. And yes, very much with you. Honestly, no matter how much it costs, I think we need high-speed rail, but the fact that it's cheaper than highways, I mean, how can they argue against that? So really appreciate you sharing your perspective. Awesome. So really excited to see everyone engaging so much in the chat. I can see there's a lot of transit nerds with us, a lot of passionate folks who are trying to fight for high-speed rail, for good union jobs, for congestion pricing, for other good policies. We're also getting a lot of great questions in the Q&A. So if you have questions, feel free to drop them in there. We're trying to answer as many of them using the Q&A function as possible, since we have a pretty packed agenda. But if we have some time at the end, we might be able to get into those. But before I pass it off to Saul to talk about strategy, I see, Jeff, you have your hand raised. Do you want to add something else?
You'll have to excuse me. I don't know what I'm doing, so it's my hand.
No worries. We'll take it as a wave. That's all good. Really appreciate it. Awesome. So we can go ahead and bring back up our slide deck. Mercedes on it. Thank you so much. And now I'll turn it over to my colleague Saul, who's going to really get us into the action portion of the call. We've been hearing some really inspiring things at the federal level, really amazing bills to fund transit operations. We've been hearing about union struggles for transit workers. We've been hearing about really important federal legislation we need to pass and high-speed rail that we need to build. And now we're going to talk about strategy. We're going to talk about how we win all of these things and more for our communities and for the climate. So I'll turn it over to Saul to walk us through it.
Amazing. Thank you, Priya. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to my friend Jeff. I got a text while you were talking that said, this guy Jeff is fucking awesome. So the vibes are very good over here. We appreciate y'all so much. So yeah, I'm Saul. I'm the political and campaigns director here at the Green New Deal Network. And yeah, it's really a pleasure to be with you all today at a difficult moment in American history. And I think that a lot of us are, kind of working through a variety of stages of grief and fury. And, we want to hold all of that as we go through this conversation. And so, if you're just kind of sitting here being in community, and you're not ready to jump into the chat and engage, or what have you, like, this is, it's a long fight ahead. And so, let's go easy on ourselves as we jump in here. Really appreciate all of the speakers and what folks shared. I'm going to walk through a little bit of our strategy and what we've sort of been doing so far, and some of what's to come. So this is kind of our North Star, this graphic here that's on the screen, right? We want to build a transportation system that's organized around people. It's organized around the environment, environmental safety, and climate change, environmental protection. We want to organize so that people can walk to school and it's safe to walk to school. And we want to organize so that people actually have choices and freedoms. so that when you're going somewhere, wherever you live in this country, you have options. If you're too young to drive, you can take a bus. If you're elderly and, or if you're having a beer coming home from a game, you can take the train home. To actually give people options. Because right now, because of corporate capture of our transportation system, like Jeff said, even when high-speed rail moves more people and is cheaper, the fossil fuel industry and the auto industry are kind of like not actually giving us the opportunities that we want to have. So we're working backwards from there. We want to build a transportation system that actually works for everyone, that benefits everyone, that can take everyone around. And as I think Ronit said in the chat a little bit earlier, we can't do that with state and local investments alone. Ultimately, our goal is to pass major federal investments in accessible, affordable, clean, reliable transportation. We need to spend hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars in not only high-speed rail, but regional rail, inner city buses, excellent bike lanes that are protected and safe, sidewalks so that kids can get to school, so that patients can walk home from the hospital. And we intend to do that with this community here. So we're very excited despite the difficult times. Like, we have a vision of what could be, and we think it is genuinely possible. And we're working backwards from there. So one of the things that we have learned from our dear friends in Minnesota, the organizers who made Tim Walz famous, is that they worked backwards. So what we're going to do is learn from that. And the whole ethos of the Green New Deal is that we need to solve climate change and related problems by working backwards from what we actually want, instead of starting with, oh, here's the political reality that's possible, and we're just going to like tweak that around and, spend like $500 on, this little grant program. We're like, what's the world that people need and deserve, and how do we work backwards from there? So in that context, our campaign is about making an amazing transportation system that works for everyone. And in 2026, we have the surface reauthorization towards the end of the year of the transportation system. It usually gets kicked. So we're obviously not in an ideal position in the context of a Republican trifecta, or in the context of a split Congress. We would have a very difficult time passing major policy. But you don't pass policy by developing it the day before. And so what we've been doing for the past year, and what we're going to continue to do, is actually develop gold standard policy and improve existing policies, like some of the ones Senator Markey mentioned, across throughout Congress. So we've been working on policy on inner city buses, improving policies on complete streets, and really putting together with a lot of folks on this call some of the gold standard bills we actually want to see that haven't necessarily been introduced, and then helping build support like Molly was talking about, for some of the really good bills that are already there, such as the Stronger Communities Through Better Transit Act. So that's part of our strategy going out 2 years. We're going to be developing those bills. We would invite everyone here to be a part of those conversations moving forward. But first, we need to grow our local power. So that's where we're going, right? We need federal investments, but first, we're working backwards from there. We need to pass amazing stuff at the state and local level. We need bus rapid transit in the city of Detroit. We need to fix up the CTA in like 5 different ways, if not 20, in the city of Chicago. We need to implement congestion pricing in New York City, and we need interregional and rural transit options all across the United States of America. So we have a lot of work to do, and a lot of that does happen at the local level. Akshay talked about this beautifully, but that's where we're starting. We think there's been some amazing transit referenda passed, but we actually think that there's opportunity and energy among young people, and in communities of color, and among essential workers, and among rail labor and bus drivers unions, to actually transform transportation and pass policies like congestion pricing, like new bus rapid transit investments in every part of this country. So as we're fighting back against the crazy defunding that Trump is going to propose, we're going to be putting forward positive visions with a lot of folks in this call and in this community on what transportation systems we need and deserve. We can't wait. And if you're here because you're worried about climate change, or if you're here because you're fighting for racial justice, we're all in the same fight when it comes to transportation, right? We need basic freedom and safety of transportation systems so that we can have options to go through our basic life experience. So the other thing that I want to mention is that, like, I was a policy staffer on Capitol Hill for 3 years doing transportation and labor policy. And it was so rare for anyone to come in and push me to make more progressive transportation policies. I grew up near the city of Detroit, and as Joel and other people who I've seen who are on this call in Michigan can attest, it's very difficult to even know where to start in the Motor City conversations on transit, even though there's great organizing happening of bus riders, of transit workers, etc. And so we see all of this, but we know there's people out here who care about trains. There's numb tots, there's grandmas who are riding the bus to see their grandkids. There's folks who are carpooling and finding different ways, more affordable ways to get around, more sustainable ways to get around. We have the people, but we need to get organized together across all of our organizations into a movement to drive forward these wins and ultimately get more federal funding for transit, for high-speed rail, etc. So what have we done so far? We started building with allies at the local, state, and federal level. There's a bunch of folks who are already deeply engaged on our last call, during which we created a unity agenda for what kind of transportation policy we want to see. We had 3 different unions who helped with the language in the unity agenda. We had disability groups. We had folks in the climate movement and the racial justice movement. Many folks on this call contributed to that agenda, and we can drop it in the chat. It's just 2 pages about here's the types of things that we want and deserve for all people on transportation. So we developed that. We also, and the points are on the slide here if you're interested in seeing that. But we also started building with state and local allies, many of whom are on the call, who are already running amazing campaigns, but we need to uplift these and we need to bring these to Congress and say, yo, look what's happening in Minnesota. Look what's been happening in Southern California. Look at these campaigns. This is not a radical proposal in Congress. This is something that's happening in Ohio. And really show members of Congress, who many of whom don't think of themselves as, oh, transportation is my main thing. You can't walk away from it. It's affecting your community and your constituents, and we need to make that case at every scale of government. At the same time, we have been building up power, and we were trying to stop Trump and elect Harris Walz. And a few of us who are on the call started a volunteer group called Train Lovers for Harris Walz back in August. And we organized hundreds of people to get involved in the campaign via donating, via attending calls and events, by knocking on doors, riding buses. Shout out to some of the amazing volunteers who led the buses to 4 different buses to Pennsylvania, to really show that we are a constituency. It's not, oh, Jeff and Akshay are tied into the labor movement, and the other folks are tied into the climate movement, and the other folks are tied into disability. We're all part of a transportation movement that we want to grow together. That's about every person should have some basic options and freedoms about how they get around. And every person on this call and across the United States and really across the world deserves that opportunity. And it's also necessary from a basic safety perspective, from an emissions perspective, and so on and so forth. So we noticed as we were building this out, we had, shout out Josh, who's on the call, who organized the convening in Chicago. We'll shout out Jerome and Ronit and others who organized the convening in Baltimore. Train Lovers for Harris Walz, we had one in DC that Miguel and myself and Tracy and others organized. We had people in different places getting transit folks together and saying, we are a political constituency. You can't split us up. We're all coming together to say, we want to get this ticket elected. And we wanted to create the space following that mobilization that many of us have been undertaking together in recent months, to take that to a new level, to say, we're not going to stop because Donald Trump, neo-fascist, got elected to the president of the United States. We're going to use our anger and our frustration into building really fucking fast trains and really beautiful bus systems and really safe bike lanes. And we're going to take the fury that powers us after this moment, and the energy that powered us through the Train Lovers campaign. And for so many of us who are urban planners and organizers who have been working on transit for many years, and we're going to change transportation in this country forever. And so if you are interested in getting more involved, we're going to send out more stuff. The campaign is obviously underway. Many of these things have been going on, but we're going to be building out the agenda more. If you're already running transit campaigns that we should be highlighting and uplifting and supporting any way we can, connecting you to other folks, let us know. But we want to get together with y'all. And what we're doing here is we're building a transportation movement. So we will never go back from the trains that we build. We're going to build things to last. We're going to build high quality, high speed rail with Jeff and his union. We're going to build excellent bus systems, and we're going to become the envy of the world on the transportation instead of the laughing stock when everyone else has moved forward. And that's going to include some work on public power. It's going to include work on housing, on urban planning, and landscape architecture. There's going to be so many people that we need to bring into this community to get it right. Leaders in the disability community, as I mentioned. So we're so grateful that y'all came out to this call, and thanks to all of our speakers, obviously, but like, let's build a movement on transportation and change it forever. Like, we're not afraid of Donald Trump. It's scary. It's a difficult time, but we're not afraid. We're going to go out and hustle and build trains, whether he likes it or not. So thank you so much for being here. I'm going to pass it back to Priya.
Thanks so much, Saul. Seeing so much positive energy and enthusiasm in the chat. I know we started off with like a somber tone, and folks understandably, I think, feeling some overwhelm, some, lack of clarity about how we move forward. And I know I'm feeling a lot more focused and excited, and know that we're going to build with the over 100 people who are sticking with us on this call. Really appreciate y'all. Great. So we're going to wrap up and just share out a few next steps. Just one more plug for the Q&A. If you want to add any more questions, we'll try to catalog all the answers to that and make sure folks get them afterward. But for now, really excited to get folks plugged in. So we haven't asked for you all. We have 106 people on this call. If every single person on this call shares our sign up link, which is on the screen here, my colleague Danielle has been posting it in the chat. If every single one of you shares this sign up link with 3 friends, we get to 300 people for our next organizing call in December, where we'll start laying out some of our tactics for building together. So we've dropped the link in the chat. Bookmark it, save it, text it to your friend right now, text it to your mom, text it to your neighbor. Let's get as many folks plugged into this as we can, so we can keep fighting together. Really appreciate everyone's enthusiasm again, everyone's focus, and everyone's drive forward for this. With that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up a few minutes early. We're going to make sure to send out the recording for this call, as well as the slides, and again, the Q&A answers. So you'll have all those things coming to you soon. And really excited to see you all on our next organizing call. Hope everyone has a chance to take a deep breath, take care of yourselves, and then we'll get organizing. Thanks so much for joining us.